All right, guys. Meteorologist Craig Moeller here with you on this Friday morning, and we've got a big tropical update. Erin is now a hurricane, and we're going to talk about that as we go along on this Friday at 11 o'clock. The Hurricane Center has made it official. We now have Hurricane Erin. The winds, 75 miles per hour. Let's get you some details on this. Movement is to the west-northwest at 18 miles per hour. So it's picked up just a mile per hour of forward speed. It's currently located 460 miles to the east of the northern Leeward Islands. And those maximum winds, 75, sustained gusts to 90 miles per hour. So it is a minimal hurricane, but the National Hurricane Center said, hey, let's go ahead and flip the switch on this. Also, the pressure is down a little bit, now down to 996 millibars. Earlier this morning, it was at 998. So the recon flights have been spotting some lower central pressure, and that indicating, again, a stronger system. Now, we'll get into the satellite images, and we'll give you some perspective here in just a moment. But I want to start off with the track, and you can see, again, that motion still expected to be to the west-northwest, and then the turn, and eventually it's going to turn farther to the north. You see that, and a gradual turn after that, expected to be off to the northeast. So we are watching for this, and it does look like we're going to see this moving along generally off in this direction from here, kind of moving along something like that as we go forward. That is the thinking right now. There's a cold front that will be approaching from the northwest, and that should help move this thing out as we go along. So we're going to continue to watch all of this as we move. Let's give you a look at the satellite images. You see it approaching the Leeward Islands. As we zoom down to that area, you'll notice the area expanding a little bit. Some of the convection out away. We've got some cloud cover moving along with the system. It's becoming a broader system. I really want to color enhance the satellite images and bring it in, because this is where you start to get a better feel for what's been going on through the overnight. As we zoom in here, we'll take a look. You can see again some of that convection rolling along. You see the areas shaded in gray and some of the pinkish areas in there. Again, an indication of deeper convection. When you see that pink, those are really high cloud tops, and that's where we're getting a lot of that storminess. It's been interesting to watch. I'm going to pause it here. And when I came in early this morning, you know, we were looking at this thing, and it was last evening and yesterday afternoon, we were seeing a lot of convection or storminess near the center of circulation. It was clear that it was strengthening. And then coming in, look at what happens here. Okay, we go back from this area where you see this kind of area right in here with a lot of convection there near the center. Well, what happens as this moves along, kind of jumps a little bit. You start seeing some convection out to the west and to the southwest of it. Okay, and that's fine, except the center of circulation is still back over here. So you started to get some convection away from the center, kind of a cycle that it went through as it continued through the overnight. Eventually, you started to see it firing back up, that convection again, the storminess near the center, and that trend continued. You can see as it's moving along, and really this tight area, that tight area where you actually have this circulation right in here, that's where we were looking at it. You get more of that storminess for a while, and it's really, again, packing up around the center of circulation here. It's looking healthier. And then it looks like maybe a little bit of a, maybe, I don't know, I'd call it a dry slot, but a little bit of a break in the convection on this side of it. But this is where it's located right now, and we are continuing to monitor this very, very carefully. Now, there are watches that are in place for some of the islands, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But let's look at those sea surface temperatures and why we're anticipating more development. And we're very confident we are going to see more intensification of this system as it goes along. When a hurricane or tropical system develops, in order for it to gain strength, it needs an energy source, okay? Needs lighter winds aloft, because if the winds aloft are stronger, it'll tilt it or shear it apart. It can blow off, kind of interrupt the structure of the system. For the system to be really healthy, you want a good, strong, low-level spin. but you need an energy source, and that energy comes from warm sea surface temperatures. So as we take a look at the sea surfaces, again, for a while when this thing started off, it was really over some relatively cool water. Back here, you see these areas shaded in blue. These were water temperatures that were below 80 degrees. That's pretty much the critical temperature. You get into this area, you start to transition to near 80, and here you are, 80, 81 degrees, 82 degrees in here. So now it's got that warmer water to draw energy from. As it moves forward, it gets into these darker shades here. You're talking about 83, maybe 84 degrees, and up to about 85 or so in this darker shade. So as it moves north of Puerto Rico and over this warm water, more intensification. By the time it reaches this point there to the east of the Bahamas, maybe just around or northeast of the Turks and Caicos and north of the Dominican Republic, almost due north of Punta Cana there. And again, it's far to the north, but once it's to that point, it's going to hit that even warmer water, and that's when it's really expected to hit its peak, maybe around that Cat 4 threshold. We're talking 125, maybe even 130 mile per hour maximum sustained winds. So that's the thinking on the sea surface temperatures. As I mentioned, we do have some tropical storm watches out, Barbuda, Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, some of the islands under it. St. Martin's, I believe, also under the watch that is out right now. And that just means that tropical storm force conditions are possible within 48 hours. And now it would be seemingly more like within the next 24 to 36 hours if they're going to get it. Now, the question is, how wide will that wind field be, and will it stretch down and reach to those islands? Keep in mind, as this thing moves along, and I'm going to stop it right there, it's going to be that right front quadrant where you have the more violent part of the storm. On the left side of it, you know, it's moving in one direction. On the left side, the winds are coming back in the opposite direction. You subtract that forward speed from the winds on the left side of the storm, and it takes a little bit of the edge off. Now, you see how the ensembles here, and this is ensembles from the Canadian, the Euro, and the GFS, or the American model, they all continue it in that general west-northwest trajectory, and then it turns off to the north and eventually to the northeast. So right now, as we look at the ensembles, you see the great majority of them packed in and well within that forecast cone. You see the cone there overlaid on top of those ensembles. We've got this outlier here. There's one of the ensembles that brings it over close to Hatteras, and you can see down to the south there, kind of brushing along Ocracoke, down maybe over the Pamlico. That is the one outlier. The vast majority of these keep it well offshore. And again, if you keep in mind that the most violent part of that would be on the west, or on the east side rather, that right front side as it's moving to the north, that again should give you some sense of relief that, hey, the worst of this is going to stay offshore. Now, I do want to show you as we take a look here, that's the ensemble plot. Let's take another look, and the track history. This has been kind of initially really tracking west and south of what the previous tracks were looking at. And it's kind of interesting because when we took a look at these tracks and you take a look at how these things verify, we've got all of these different models. We've got hurricane models, we've got the global models, we have all of this, the Hurricane Center forecast. You're looking at the forecast track, kind of how it was forecast to go, and that was kind of a blend of the Euro and the GFS and then what some of the other hurricane models were suggesting. The one model that's really done the best job of handling this so far, and really it's been pretty clear that it's been doing the best job thus far, has been the European model. And now we're seeing that forecast, again, track kind of lining up more in line with where the Euro was going. So I wanted to make that point. As we take a look here, I'm going to show you a couple more looks. First of all, here's the cone history, and you can see again how the cone has been adjusted a little bit more to the south and west. And as we take a look at the current situation here, again, you can see that cone very much calling for a turn to the north, and then eventually the center of that cone kind of making that turn back to the northeast. So while it looks like, okay, it's getting closer, and it will get closer heading in this direction, then it turns to the north, and then eventually back to the north-northeast. And it's almost the center of that cone, halfway between Bermuda, which is this little black dot right here on the screen, and then of course you look at Hampton Roads and Norfolk and Cape Hatteras. So right out there in the middle is where we have the cone, the center of the cone. Now, could be farther to the west. That's a possibility. Could turn a little earlier and come closer to Bermuda. That's also something we're watching. But when we take a look at the deterministic, the European and the GFS models, it's kind of like the average and saying, okay, this is where this model is going to kind of put its flag and say this is where it's going. The European is in red and the American or GFS model is in yellow. As we bring it along, I'm going to stop it at a few points along the way. Now again, this is later tonight and into Saturday, and here we go. Both of these models right on top of each other. Very little separation between the centers here of the Euro in red and the GFS in yellow. As we jog forward, again, you see them right on top of each other. This is into early Sunday. Notice how these lines that you see are really getting tighter and packing up where they all merge together. That's because this storm is forecast to really intensify and become stronger and stronger. So as it becomes stronger, those lines are going to tighten up. You can see the tighter the lines are, the stronger the winds on the east side of that. You see how it's really packing up in here. Same thing with the GFS. They both have this thing strengthening as it moves past Puerto Rico to the north and north of the Dominican Republic, and still staying out just a little bit farther to the east of the Turks and Caicos. Folks there will certainly be holding their breath until it makes that turn to the northwest. But that is anticipated. So here are the Bahamas, and the Bahamas again watching. Might get a little breezy. Certainly a lot of wave activity propagating out from those storms and heading out through the Bahamas. Again, the northern parts of Hispaniola, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, even Cuba, you know, getting past the Bahamas could see some increased wave action. And then the southeast U.S. coastline will also see some large wave activity and some large swells coming out from what is expected to be a strong Category 3, if not a Category 4 hurricane at this point. Now we take it forward a bit more, and you see how it makes that turn. Where it was moving to the northwest, it turns more to the north, and eventually you're going to see it making a turn back to the northeast. Again, this is a very, very powerful hurricane, a major hurricane passing with the center right there for the Euro, and this is the one that has been most accurate to this point. This is early Wednesday. Now, the worst of this would be off to the east and to the northeast. This area in here would be the most violent part of this hurricane based on this position and trajectory. And you see again the GFS showing up in yellow. Bermuda here, as it's looking at the worst of these storms passing out to the west, you're thinking, wow, did we get lucky with that? They may still have some wind, a little bit. They're kind of on the skirts, the outskirts. There might be some squalls that kind of wrap around towards Bermuda. Certainly some large waves and maybe some increased tide levels. But the worst of this would be much, much closer to the center here if the Euro is correct. And again, here if the GFS is correct. All right, we'll take it forward from there. You see it making that turn, and now it starts to stretch a little bit off to the northeast. Now, the reason for that, as we get into early next week, and again, I can back this up a little bit. I'm going to jog this back here to Monday or Tuesday. At this point, okay, there is a cold front that will be moving into the East Coast. We're going to see temperatures here in Hampton Roads. We expect those temperatures to be in the mid-80s, maybe even mid to upper 80s, and a little bit muggy early Monday. But as a front comes through on Monday, it's going to turn cooler late Monday, and it's going to become drier as drier air moves in from the northwest. That front will continue to slide offshore, and with that being the case, that is why this system should turn up a little bit more to the north and to the northwest. You can see how it then, or to the northeast rather, you see how it then accelerates off, moving in that direction. So it's kind of interesting to see, again, how things play out, but there is a very good chance that this thing stays offshore and maybe the center stays out over water for a long time. even misses those areas in eastern Canada up towards Halifax, St. John's, should stay east of that as well. Eventually, there's a trough up over the North Atlantic that should kind of pull it up into that. At any rate, things are going to be interesting for the next few days. I want to talk to you about some of the other potential impacts. Bottom line on this, Erin Center is very, very likely. It's highly likely Erin Center will pass between Bermuda and the East Coast. Should be almost splitting the two. If the Euro is correct, it's going to be about dab smack in the middle. All right, that does not mean that there won't be impacts here. And those impacts are going to include heavy surf, dangerous rip currents, and not just here in Hampton Roads, but up and down the eastern seaboard and potentially higher than normal tides. Now, you know, it may not be dramatically higher. It's going to depend on what the wind field looks like. That's what pushes the water around. I do expect some larger swells to come in towards the East Coast and into the mid-Atlantic. If that is a little closer and we do get some northeast winds kind of broadly wrapping around that, even if it's not anything close to tropical storm or hurricane force because that stuff's farther offshore, we may still see a little increase in tide height next week. And of course, with the large surf, the heavy activity there, the high waves, some beach erosion will also be possible. There's a lot to watch, and we're getting more and more information in all the time. One reason that we're getting more updates to all of this, obviously they're continuing to scrub through all the satellite images, but we're getting more looks now. Hurricane hunters are flying into this and crisscrossing and looking for lower pressures. And I've got right there, it looks like they just found a surface pressure in this most recent flight down to 994. Right now, with the 11 o'clock update, it's showing that pressure at 996. I'm going to be interested to see if they don't possibly lower that pressure with a special update at some point, just to say, hey, we found an even lower pressure with that recon flight. So we'll continue to watch. Again, hurricane hunters bravely crisscrossing the center of that storm, and they're using dropsondes. So they go in, they've got radar on the plane, they can take a look, they do penetration through the walls. When they actually have an eye wall, they'll do that and fly through and see what the winds are like. They can measure all of that in real time from the reconnaissance flight. But they also have tubes in those hurricane hunters, and they drop little instrument packets with a little parachute that goes down, and it drops down to the ocean. And as it falls through the atmosphere, it's getting all kinds of information on temperatures, dew points. It's looking at winds, obviously, as it's being tracked, but also the air pressure. When it finds that lower surface pressure, and now down to 994, that's yet another sign that this hurricane now, Hurricane Erin, is strengthening. So again, we're going to be getting a lot more information in on that. We have special ways that we are covering this for you here at 13 News Now. Now, we talk a lot, and we do have our 13 News Now Plus, where you're watching this feed, one of the many outlets we have. We also have this out on YouTube. But if you watch on 13 News Now Plus, every morning at 9 o'clock, Monday through Friday, I do the Weather Desk, where we talk about the top weather headlines each day. That goes on every single morning at 9 a.m. We take a deeper dive. We get into all of this, and I have a half an hour show where I just talk about whatever's going on with the weather. Obviously, in the tropics, like this morning, we spent a lot of time talking about Erin. In addition, Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandagis does Hurricane Hub Live every weekday evening at 8 o'clock. And Tim's deeper dive into the tropics and what's going on, it is awesome. I highly recommend that. When Tim's away and Evan's working, Evan Stewart will also have that for you. They both have a vast knowledge of what's going on in the tropics, and they really do a great job breaking it all down. So my advice to you as we take a look at this system, again, it is still a good distance off, 460 miles east of the northern Leeward Islands, moving to the west-northwest now at 18 miles per hour. It's going to follow a path that will likely keep it north of the islands and to the east of the Turks and Caicos, east of the Bahamas, and eventually turning it to the north and to the northeast, passing it between Bermuda and the east coast of the United States. I will tell you here at 13 News Now, we will work very much to keep you updated on everything happening with Erin and elsewhere in the tropics. And as I mentioned that, I'll just also quickly mention, just because I know we have some different folks watching from different parts of the country, there's one other area that we're also watching for potential tropical development. And Evan, it looks like they've just taken that down. It was a 50% chance. And the Hurricane Center, I'm going to look it up in real time here. Let's see.
2020.
2020. Okay, that's why it just went yellow. When I came in this morning, that was up to a 50% chance for development before making it into the Texas coastline or right along the Texas-Mexican border there. In fact, you know what we're going to do here? Because we're doing this live and we've got the freedom and flexibility to do it, let's take a closer look at the radar there and we'll see if South Texas is seeing anything just yet. We're going to zoom in and we'll go to our radar here, and you can see the storm outlook there across the northern U.S., but I wanted to get to the mosaic radar, and you see down there to the south. This is what we're talking about right here. Some of those heavy tropical rains approaching Brownsville, Corpus Christi down there. They're going to be watching this all very, very closely there. Harlingen could see some more rain coming in. That is the northern edge of this area. There was a 50% chance for development as it moves up towards Brownville. It is now down to a 20% chance. And really, if you think about it, it's already right there along the coast, so it just doesn't have much time to develop. So down along the western Gulf Coast from Brownsville up to Corpus Christi, some good soaking rains, but hopefully nothing too crazy as far as the tropics go. At any rate, we'll continue to keep you updated on that. And one more look at the 11 o'clock update on Erin. I'll plot it for you. The maximum wind, 75 miles per hour, sustained gusting to 90. It is a hurricane moving west-northwest at 18. And that pressure, again, Evan, they just updated it. I told you about that recon flight. They just took it down to 996. So, again, we could see those winds maybe coming up to 80 miles per hour. As the hurricane hunters are flying through it, they will continue to find those winds and continue to analyze it. And as soon as we get information, we'll pass it along to you here from 13 News Now. Remember to check out Tim Pandages' Hurricane Hub live tonight at 8. And be sure and join Evan Stewart. He'll have you covered today at noon on 13 News Now. We'll also have other updates through the afternoon as more information comes in on Erin. Have a great day, a great weekend, and keep an eye to what's going on out in the tropics.